Welcome back as we head back to the nation's capital, where embattled EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt resigned amid no fewer than 14 separate investigations into issues ranging from misuse of government funds to the solicitation of employment for his wife. That said, while there was much to criticize during Pruitt's challenged tenure, the former Oklahoma Attorney General did deliver a decision critical to the future of our community by ordering the complete removal of the dioxin dump known as the San Jacinto River waste pits. I'm going to start with Bob Price on this. What's your point?
Well, I was a little disappointed in the EPA secretary. I interviewed him when he was the Attorney General of Oklahoma, a brilliant man, and he got himself into some issues there that clearly should not have gotten involved in. But that said, when you go after the regulatory agency and start whittling away at that, you're going to have people coming after you, and if you haven't dotted every I and crossed every T, they're going to get you. You got a building full of people that are looking not just to get rid of you, but to get you thrown in jail. And you know, Attorney General Sessions lives in that same environment. So kudos to him for the things he accomplished that were good for this country, getting the water for farmers back to where it's not, where a little stream that once a year has water in it is considered a navigable waterway by the Environmental Protection Agency. That's gone now. So a lot of good things for farmers came out of his tenure there, and good things for business.
Marcus?
Yeah, there are a lot of people that do some good things but are terrible people, and they do more bad.
I don't think he's a terrible person, but he certainly appears to have made some mistakes.
I think he appears to make a lot of mistakes. I think the idea that this guy was corrupt from the get-go, and as you said yourself, he was corrupt before he got to Washington, D.C.
I did not say that.
You didn't say that. I'm saying that.
Don't put words in my mouth.
That he shouldn't have been into.
Got that cleared up.
Right, something that he shouldn't have been into in the first place, just as he did in D.C. He got himself into some things that he should not have been into. But that's not the story. The story is this guy resigned. He was not fired. He was not terminated. After 14 investigations, after 14 times of identifying swampy behavior, nobody stepped up and said, this guy has to be gone. From the renting the apartment from the guy who was in his industry, we didn't do anything about that, right? We just let it slide. Now, here's the biggest part. America, pay attention to this. You're not any better off, right? And this is the part where our system is screwed up. His replacement was a lobbyist for the companies that he will now sit in front of and give them a gain or a benefit. This guy worked for the companies. He was a lobbyist on behalf of companies that now he will have the opportunity to give carte blanche. Our system is screwed, and if you're not a lobbyist or if you don't have the money to have someone lobby for you, poo-poo on you.
Could it be we need balance in this country where you're not over-regulated or under-regulated? When are we going to find the sweet spot?
Yeah, but balance is one thing. You have to have balance without corruption. Yeah, and as far as Pruitt is concerned, a haughty pride goes before a fall, because the arrogance when he was caught doing wrong was beyond the wrong. It was like, okay, it's me. Okay, why are you questioning me? I'm like, you're an employee, okay? You were not elected. You are an employee. So I am so glad that it got to be too much, not just for him, but for his family. And that's what he said. That's why he resigned.
Okay, I'm going to switch topics real quickly. China this week claimed the U.S. has begun the largest trade war in history. And Friday, some pretty significant shots were fired with a bilateral exchange of new tariffs totaling $68 billion. U.S. exports have also been hit with retaliatory tariffs leveled by Mexico, Canada, the EU, and Russia. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce issued a state-by-state impact projection and says the Trump trade policy could reduce what Texas sells overseas by close to $4 billion. Panel, could the current economic upturn come to a crashing halt if this continues? As a major port city, are the stakes particularly high for Greater Houston? Starting with Bill King.
Yeah, so the first trade war we were in was in the second term of the Jefferson administration with England. It ended poorly, and everyone since then has ended poorly. This is not going to be good for the country. Look, when you increase tariffs, that's increasing taxes. So for all my Republican friends that are against increasing taxes, this is a tax increase, plain and simple. I think the political consequences of this are going to be a lot more dire. I had a lobbyist friend that was in Washington. He was in a bar, and there were some guys in there from Montana. And he said, what are you doing here? He says, we're here lobbying against the tariffs because this is killing our beef exports to Mexico. And he said, were you Trump supporters? And said, oh, absolutely, Trump supporters. He said, are you going to vote for him next time? And they said, well, it depends on whether he continues to do this or not. Wow. So apparently, you can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it, but you can't bankrupt farmers and ranchers in Montana.
Nyanza, jump in here.
So let's just talk about the basics, how it affects us in our pocketbook every day. So this 4th of July weekend, maybe not in Houston, people were eating hot dogs outside, but other places around the country, we were eating hot dogs. The pork products that the U.S. exports to China now are being held up at the stations, and so when they get to the mainland, they're having a hard time processing the pork products, which what that means is if they're holding up our meats at their borders because of the tariffs, then that makes our meat spoil, and it also makes it more expensive for their inland people to buy. When you have $34 billion of tariffs going both ways, that affects all of us. I'm not sure if we can say this was so much of an economic upturn because of the current president. I can say we had an economic upturn because of our last president. But now we're going to have a downturn because of the tariffs that are being imposed by this president.
Okay, I'm going to go Bob and then Tony to finish.
We've had 30 years of trade negotiations going against the United States that need to be reversed. The president is taking a different tact in a different approach to try to force some negotiations to renegotiate NAFTA, renegotiate some of the trade deals with other countries. It's going to get ugly, but I think in the long run it'll be better off for the United States.
Tony, you don't think so?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, the whole idea of a tariff war, the metaphor is troubling because President Trump dodged military service, so all he knows about wars are Twitter wars. And worse, the executive power is used for war. So if we're invaded by real threats, then he has the power to send the army. He's also sabotaging the Congress because of treaties that are being sabotaged, because he can just raise these tariffs on a whim. And that's really troubling as well. I'm actually surprised that Abbott spoke up and said, hey, you're going to affect our economy. This is $3 billion. Where's Ted Cruz in all this? I haven't seen Ted Cruz open his mouth about this.
Where's Congress across the board?
No one is paying attention, and like Nyanza said, it's going to hit the consumers more than it hit anybody. I told this to someone who works at the Chronicle. The paper that the Chronicle uses and most newspapers, they get from Canada. With the tariffs that he's put on Canada, it's a 75% increase
Nobody
in those
reads
papers.
Paper anyway.
Yeah,
I love the Chronicle.
We don't read your paper. We don't read your paper.
Still ahead, our panel answers that question, what did we miss? So stay with us.